Welcome, a very big welcome at our CLEVR office in Amersfoort. You're in the attic currently. Maybe some of you visited us last time. It was, I think, April, May, maybe. That was also in one of those attics, but then it was over there, and you had to take a little walk over there. Yeah, my direction, nothing. But now we are here, and we're very happy to have you as our launch event here, because a few people put a lot of effort and a lot of work to make this all happen, and as our permanent viewing location. So we're very happy with that. That's mainly Dave over there. We have Barbara in the back. She always does a lot for the meetup, so that's very helpful as well. And we have Natalie, Yolanda, Stein. They also put a great effort in making this happen. So first, a big thanks for them. Yeah. Well, and nice. And today we have two speakers. We will be talking about REST, and especially REST with Mendix. There is a big launch coming up, Mendix 10.6. So it will be the midterm support release. And there are some great announcements related to that as well. Therefore, we invited Maurits Elzinga. He is sitting over there, the product manager of Studio Pro. And we have our very own colleague, Vincent Mulder. He's an advanced consultant here at CLEVR. He will kick it off. So I will gladly hand over the microphone to you. You're already on it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Enjoy.
All right. Everybody excited? Nice, that's the energy I'm looking for. Thank you. So I heard a lot of thanks from you, but also thank you for joining our meetup today. So I'm excited as well. And today I will talk about my experience and takeaways about the REST connection. And my goal for today is to give you all some inspiration and maybe even some ideas. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. But don't stop with questions. If you have something to add or anything, please feel free. Maybe I will have learn something today as well. For the online people, your questions can be written down. Will be done on the end. And during the room, you can ask during if you want to. So what we're going to talk today. First off, I will briefly talk about me, who I am, and how I got to standing over here. Then I will briefly talk about the REST connection, what it is, and then I will talk about consideration when implementing the REST connector. So I will mainly talk about consuming and the publishing part, which is also really easy to do with Mendix, but mainly the focus today is going to be the consuming part. And we'll finish off with a small demo. So I will start with my mom's favorite subject, me. I'm a 90s kid, so that means I've been raised with big desktops and not much to do for a kid on a computer. But still, I loved clicking around and finding out what a computer could do. And that continued till high school, where I found Game Maker and was also toying around with that. Anyone familiar with Game Maker? Yeah, one person. So basically, Game Maker is a Mendix for 2D games. So you can build up, and I love to do that. But yeah, as I grew up, became a teenager, and I got distracted by things teenagers get distracted by. So after that, so some people get distracted by different things. So basically, I went to university. I went studying psychology, and after that, I went to study my master in international management. I went to do on sales. From sales, I went to consultancy, but still I thought something was missing. And yeah, next to my job, I started programming with a course called CS50. It's a Harvard course. I really suggest it if you want to dive deeper in what programming stems from. It starts with C and it goes all the way to Java. And for Dutch, it's free. So that's also really nice. And yeah, I did some groundwork. Okay, I want to do something with it. And I found Mendix. And 4 years later, here I am presenting for you guys. But enough about me. That's not why you guys came here for, I think. Maybe you do. That's nice. So the REST connection. Who of you have no clue what a REST connection is? a few hands. And so, yeah, REST connection is nothing more than two applications talking to each other, right? You can compare it with going to the McDonald's, let's say the drive-through. Let's say you are one application and the McDonald's employee at the intercom is the other application. Now, you can ask for information about the menu, you can order stuff, you can change your order, or you can even delete your order. And I've never noticed at McDonald's, you have always a formal way of talking. REST connection is just like that. So it's a really formal way of communicating. And in that way, you can exchange information. So this is kind of how it looks like, right? So a REST connection, again, is like a bridge that lets different apps or software programs work together by following a set of rules of communication. It's an API, which is more of an umbrella term for it. Now, the REST connection has two kinds of service. So you have the publisher. Let's see if I can light it up. Which is the server, and you have the consumer, which is on this side. And with it, you can put 4 actions. You can get, post, put, and delete. So you can get some information. You can set information on the other side. You can change information, which is put, and can also delete information. So, okay, now if you're going to build a REST connection, how are you going to do that? What you're going to think about? Today, I will use a case. And let's say a company wants in their application wants to look for other companies. Well, that's possible with the Chamber of Commerce API. So I will first sometimes do the Chamber of Commerce Jesus, API. So, but first of all, you have the publisher side, right? So the publisher, so the server side, is something you can decide things about. They already made the decision, and probably they have documented it. And one of the decisions they made is the markup language. And these are the 4 most common languages. First of all, you have JSON. This is the most used and the default for most RESTful APIs. It's really readable and lightweight and therefore widely supported. Then we have XML. It has a hierarchical structure and it has schema support. And that's why common uses is legacy system and complex data and well-defined structures. Now, this is a lot harder to read. What I noticed when setting up my own connection with the Chamber of Commerce, I had an oil rig, and as you can imagine, an oil rig doesn't really have an address, but I had to find the address. So I had to go and read through the schema, okay, which address can I use? And then reading through the XML can be pretty difficult. Then you have HTML. Yeah, of course, it's web friendly. It's what web browsers use. And that's why its common use is rendering content in web-based API. You have plain text, and it's simplicity and lightweight. It's used for simple data exchange when minimal formatting is required. But of course, always security is important. You don't want to lose your data easily. And these are the 4 more common ways you can do it. First, you have an API key, and it's a secure access code that enables authorization interaction with a specific API by uniquely identifying the requester. You can do it by basic authentication. As you can see, that's easily done with Mendix. And it's just verifying the identity of a user just by credentials, so username and password. You have OAuth that goes actually to a third party. So you give your credentials to a third party. The third party goes to a server and says, what information do you have for me? And we'll return it to the third party and you. And finally, you have GWT, also called JSON Web Token. And it's a compact, URL-safe means of representing claims between 2 parties. It's often used for authentication and information exchange. And it consists of 3 parts, a header, a payload, and a signature. And that allows the recipient to verify both the integrity of the data and the sender's authenticity. Now, I always have troubles. Okay, so how can I compare it? And I would like to think you of a library. Let's say you're a library and have a librarian who wants to give you books or not. So with an API key, you give a passcode to unlock a specific section of the library. So you go to the librarian, say, okay, what's the magic word? books. Say, ah, that's you, and you'll get to a specific section of the library. With authentication, it's like a library card, right? You hand off your library card with your username and your password, and you get access to the library. Now, OAuth is more like lending your library card to your friend. And you don't give them your PIN, but you allow them to use your card to borrow a specific book, but they can't access your entire library, but only what you have agreed upon and on front. And JSON Web Token is like a bookmark in the borrowed book. It contains information about the book and like who borrowed it and when. And the librarian can then verify the bookmark's authenticity by checking the library card to ensure it hasn't been tampered with. So that's all done by the publisher. You just have to adhere it. But now for the cool part. You can make some own decisions when building your app. Now, you start with two possible ways where you can do it. You can just build your own REST connection, or you can use a connector module. Well, when you have a small implementation or you need flexibility, you can use REST action. This also enhances the readability for the other programmers. On the other side, of course, you have the connectors. And you can choose them for the marketplace. And reasons for choosing this option will be working with files, complex authentication, or the platform-supported module. So one thing to consider is, okay, how complex is your data when selecting these? So for our example, we just want a simple search open with the application. So we would go with a REST action. But when building your own REST action, always put it in your own a separate module. You can reuse the microflows, but it creates better maintainability for the future. Then you can help with mapping. And one day to do it is with Postman. And it's an application designed for developers to streamline API development, testing, and automation process. And it is a really good interface, and it's really friendly to help testing and to see if everything is going correctly. So let me show you by an example. So over here, you see that you can have 4 actions. You see the get. So if you want information, you put in there, and you can put the URL. You'll see that the parameters are automatically taken over. So you have the Chamber of Commerce number and the page and amount you want to see on the page. And next to that, you can also put in some authorization information if you want. And of course, you can also put headers, like an API key, for example. That's something you would put here. You can press send. And you'll get a response. So you will see this is JSON, and you can see how easy it is to read. And we'll get the response. And this response, of course, you can use in Mendix to create your mapping. So you might remember I was talking earlier about an XML with a big schema. Well, I had to go through this. So you can imagine it was fairly hard to read. So when mapping, you see a lot that sometimes people just click everything. And I would suggest never to do that. Just look on the data, what do you need? And if you don't need it, don't click it. It will keep your application way more maintainable and more efficient. And of course, faster. When mapping, of course, you have to couple the entities. Well, if you do automatically mapping, you will see it will always do non-persistent. And the reason for that, it's most of the time suggested because it keeps your application way more maintainable. So let's say the publisher changes something, it's easier to change your whole entire application with it. You can do it with persistent entity. It's called tight coupling. And you can do that if your entities are, and your whole application, the entities look like the mapping. And in that way, it's faster and yeah, we'll get a faster application. Another tip is that you can also add entities yourself. And if you have missing attributes and you click on map automatically, the attributes will add from itself. There's another tip I can give you is using inheritance. So when objects look really similar, use inheritance to keep cleaner and better maintainable domain models. For our user case today, we would go for non-persistent, right? Because we just want to look up. We don't want to commit the objects. We just want to show on the screen the results. So if you're done with mapping, you can start implementing the REST connection. And one way to start is with building an URL. And in the domain name, you can usually see already if it's a developer's or a production environment. So over here, you see that it's developers, so that's a development environment. Of course, you have the query and the parameters where you can find specific objects in the REST connection and a path which goes to the correct database of the REST connection. So when configuring the REST service, of course, you can make decisions if you want to do it hard-coded, do use constants, or really go for in-app configurations. So when you do hard-coded, of course, it's easy to build and easy to read for other developers. But the risk is that, of course, when a publisher changes something, you have to go to maintenance, have to fix it yourself, and of course, to reset. And you have to go in one environment. Another one, of course, you can use is constants. Now, this is handy because you can use a constant and you can, different environments, you can have different parts. And, but still, the downside, of course, if something goes wrong, the publisher changes something, you still have to, of course, restart the server. That's something you still have to do. The final solution is, of course, is in-app configurations. So you do everything in your own database and you put the settings there. It's a little bit more work. For other developers, it's a little bit more harder to read, to see, okay, what is going on? But you don't need to restart it. You can just change it in the app, and it's going forward from there. It's a good suggestion, by the way, then have a good documentation, because if your client changes anything there, you don't want to lose the information. So if you look at here, who would use hard-coded? Little hands. Who would use for the domain name constants? That's already hard. Yeah, that's the most hands. And are there any fans of in-app configurations? Little. So for most of the things, people will go then for constants. So of course you hope that everything goes correct, right? But sometimes you do get error codes. And these can easily be found in libraries on the internet. Shortly covered, if it starts with 2, normally everything is going well. If it's 4, it's something wrong on your side. For example, unauthorized, it means your API key, for example, is wrong. 5 is normally when the server side, it goes wrong. And 3, it means the path has changed or something is going on with the path. So always, of course, it's a good option to log. Even if it goes great or goes wrong, just keep on logging to see what is going on with the REST connection. It's definitely best practice. With Mendix, it's easy to do with system error. It will automatically see if something went wrong and you will get a code out of it. But there are instances where you have to go in the output and look it for yourself, look in the string if there's an error. So if you've done that, you finally can have an whole application. Well, I'll show you shortly how it's done. So let me make it a little bit bigger. Where's my mouse? Over here. So basically, let's see, you have the REST connection, and you can see that we have a small domain model with non-persistent entities, because of course we don't want to commit it, we just want to look up. You can see the mapping, of course a JSON, which also is created from the mapping. And of course, I've also picked the constants for the URL, for example. So if we go, where is it? Ah, there it is. So let's see, let's say, whoop, we can search. And you'll see that here over here, the parameter string, so the end of the search, so you have to search, you can see that it has been connected for the search fields. So you can see that this over here are the parameters. Then over here is the REST connection, and it'll get the information. You can see the get, and you can either say if something goes wrong, it will go to the log. And here will be the import from the JSON. So from the text, it will get an import. So if you continue, you will see that we have a result from the Chamber of Commerce of test BV Donald. From this, I think I want to thank you for your attention. I think we're looking forward to Maurits now will show us what's different from this way, the old REST connection and the new stuff that is ahead coming in now in Mendix 10. Any questions?
How did you deal with your complex types in the XML file? Sure.
Trial and error. So I got the information. So I tested it with Postman, and I had to really look for the path and see, okay, where is it? And from there on, I had to try it a couple of times to see, okay, where is the entity and which path do I have to follow? So you have a branch, but I didn't have to go for the branch, which was the Ulrich. I really had to go to the main company for the visiting address.
Okay. You also said that using inheritance would be a nice way, especially for doing your import mapping.
Mm-hmm.
How do you use the inheritance in import mapping?
Well, to be honest, I haven't used it personally, but I know it can be done. And I heard it, makes, you can just inherit it and makes it more maintainable. I think Jeroen knows more about it, and you can maybe ask something about that if you're interested in. Any other questions? Oh yeah, you want a mic? Because I have no other question anyway. There you go.
I'm very sorry, but I think the question was about using inheritance to make it more maintainable.
Well, first thing I saw in the XML was a complex type.
Yeah.
I'm sure that all of us who have done import mapping with complex types know that this is actually difficult.
Painful, yeah.
Yeah. So I was wondering, maybe experience some kind of way in which you thought, Vincent, you thought that this was actually a very nice way of working, like filtering out sections with complex types from your actual input or something like that, because that's basically what we've all been struggling with. And what I secretly hope, Maurits maybe telling us a bit more.
All sorts.
And likewise for using inheritance, right? Complex types, we saw a domain which actually has a lot of inheritance in there, so quite a few aggregates, I think. So that's also one of the things that still sort of looking forward to it. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll just let him talk. So I was just wondering whether you had some new insights in this, but this is a tough problem still, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And then there's not that much more to add. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Are there any more questions? Yeah, Tarun?
What's the best practice related to user roles in REST services? The publishing a REST service from the Mendix app. You define a new type of REST service user, or can you use an existing user role?
Yeah, so the question is how you handle user roles when implementing REST connections, yeah? Then I give over the mic back to Vincent, and we can repeat the question for the people at home. They asked that.
Well, you kind of repeated already, right?
Yeah.
So, for user roles, it depends, of course, who's going to use it, I think. I think if you are an employee, and I think it's really case dependent in that case. Let's say for this one, it's an open API. That's not much secret about it. You can use just an employee, but of course, if you have a little bit more what needs to be strict, and also with the publisher, you can a little bit settle a bit more down in user roles that not everybody can look into it. So I really think that's case decided what yeah, what to do. Any other questions? No. All right. Thank you. I feel.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Maurits, and I'm here to talk about Mendix Connect, which is, well, in a very short sentence, I'm going to be talking about some of the stuff that's going to make everything that Vincent just explained somewhat obsolete. No, but in all seriousness, I'm going to be talking about our improved REST and database connectors. And I'll get to why I say that in such a way in a moment. Now, first off, of course, yeah, who is this guy and why is he talking to us? I'm Maurits. I'm the product manager for Studio Pro at Mendix. Not only Studio Pro, also Studio Pro Extensibility. For those of you who've worked with Model SDK or have seen some of the extensibility demos, it's also me. And I'm also now responsible for the new REST connector and REST integrations in Studio Pro and in Mendix in general. So yeah, happy to speak to all of you today. Now, first off, I mentioned Mendix Connect. What is that term? What does it mean? Well, essentially, at Mendix, when we talk about Mendix Connect, it's an umbrella term for any type of integration that you can do or may want to do with your Mendix landscape. And we see that at multiple levels in your Mendix integrations, essentially. So, if you're talking about a smaller landscape, then you may want to integrate with a couple of different applications, different tools. For that, we're releasing very shortly the REST connector and the database connector. We've also been working on AWS connectors. Some of you may have already used those in the past. But then if we go beyond that, of course, and your landscape grows, well, your needs are also going to grow. And that's where we're talking about things like external entities, using the catalog. For those of you who were at the Meetup last week, there was a very interesting presentation there about how you can actually integrate using those tools as well. I won't go into them today. And then, even beyond that, if you want to go even further in your landscape, you have a lot more orchestration, a lot of different apps in your landscape that you want to integrate and want to connect together. Then, we also provide things like business events and a broker and governance tooling to support that landscape. So whenever we mention Mendix Connect, this is really what we're all talking about. Now, however, if we make that a bit more tangible, that's only part of the puzzle, right? I mean, you just saw Vincent talk a lot about quite a complex situation, essentially. There's a lot of things that come into play. And at Mendix, basically what we try to do and what we try to do with all our tooling is that we build it for a spectrum, that we make it possible for every developer. So what you saw with Vincent's presentation is really that we provide a full control solution for integrating with other applications via REST, using and consuming any REST API, essentially. But it's all well and good. But how can we actually make that a lot easier for people who are maybe just getting started? Or let's say you want to quickly actually set something up and the API that you want to consume is not actually all that complex. Well, that's why I'm here today. So let's dive in. So let's start off with our new REST connector. And who here can remember the first time calling a REST API in Mendix and how easy that was? I hear some laughter in the audience as well. So it's a known issue that of course a lot comes into play, and it's also what was just explained before, right? I mean, there's a lot of different moving parts here, and you really need to understand the entirety of all those moving parts to be able to put everything together, to put the puzzle together. And that's still a great way to do it because it allows for building out any possible situation that you can have. But I mean, in this case, I've put an article here that explains how to also do it. There's also somewhat of what Vincent explained earlier. But as you can see, there's a lot of steps. It's quite a lot of work to implement it. And you also don't really see if it's actually working until the app is actually running. So yeah, you need to run your app, you need to test it. Oh, something's wrong, I need to change something. I need to try it out again. Yeah, this all just takes a lot of time to configure it. And we also saw that it was quite difficult to learn. You know, you add a microflow action because you want to set up a REST connection. Oh, and if you're a new user, all of a sudden I need to learn about mappings. And if I need to learn about mappings, I need to learn about creating a JSON structure or creating an XML structure. So you're learning all these different steps along the way. That's what we're actually trying to solve now. So what we've done with the new REST connector is that we've really created an interactive way of configuring REST, which basically means that you can test calls directly within Studio Pro. This means that you're no longer going to have to use tools like Postman because you can make that a lot easier. It's also been built with reuse in mind. So you'll also be able to reuse certain components, making it more efficient to actually do things. And I think my personal favorite part about this is the implicit mappings, because you no longer have to think about all the complexities that come into play with mappings. Now, what does something like that actually look like? Well, I'll give a live demo in a moment, but just to talk you through it, there's a way to actually make those calls quite easily. You can fill in a URL, you can send a request. There's tooling there to add things like a base URL or set up authentication as well, right there in the connector, making it a bit easier to set it up. And as soon as you get a response back, you're actually also able to generate a response structure on the back of that, which can then directly map into your domain model. Well, if you want to use it, then that's where you will need it. So it can actually create that response entity, and then you can use that wherever you want in your application. So what does that actually look like? Well, I prefer to show what we're going to be doing here directly in a live application. Hopefully the live demo effect doesn't come into play. But yeah, I have a nice new 10.6 Studio Pro version running here. And I can actually add a new document type. So what you have to do before is you create your mappings, you create your structures. But now you can actually create a consumed REST service document type. And I'm just going to call it consumed REST service for now. And I can fill out whatever I want here. Now, I already have a local API running here that I can use. So I have it running on this URL here. So let me fill it out. So fill out the URL and I believe this is correct. Yep. I get back. Okay, so I get a response back. Now, of course, that's just my page in general. And I can also add in the exact API, of course, that I want to call here. So I want to call something orders, let's say. And let's say I actually want to also pass a parameter in here, because what's the point of having a REST integration if I can't make it dynamic, right? We want to make this reusable. So I could create something like order ID in here, just add in the order ID and add a parameter in here. And then by creating it, I can add a test value as well. Oh. Of course, I don't need to use the brackets in there. But if I then fill out my parameter, I get a test value, I can set up my URL here. I can get a nice response back, and I'll actually be able to immediately see a response structure from there. So in this case, I have an order, and I have some items in that order, some line items. Nothing spectacular, very simple. But the benefit here is within a few minutes, I've basically done all the work that you would normally need to run your application for. You need to go to Postman, need to go back and forth, try things out. And wait until it actually works. And if I now click on create entities, it actually created my entities in my domain model. And if I then go to create a microflow, and I add the new microflow action for it, because it uses something different, I can also immediately, select my request in here. And it actually, allows me to then add in a parameter for my ID as well. And that's it. I no longer have to set up anything else. I can then immediately start using this in my application. So, oh, I'm glad that you guys like it. So yeah, this is really something that can make the entire development life a lot easier and really speed things up. Of course, it is still in beta. We'll get to questions at the end. But yeah, this is really something that can make things a lot easier, a lot quicker to configure now. It is still in beta. There's still a lot of things that we're going to add here. But you can actually already start using this from 10.6 onwards. As I said, it's going to be out quite soon. Now, I don't just want to leave you with REST, of course, because that's not the only thing we're doing under Mendix Connect. And we're, if you're using REST integrations, you're probably also using, or have been using, some other types of integrations. And one that we've also seen being used quite a lot is database integrations. It's a very similar story, really. Previously, you had to do a lot of manual driver setups to set things up. Again, I've taken another article, and you can see by the amount of scrolling I had to do. It's again not something very straightforward to do. And again, you couldn't actually see if it works until the app was running. You had to first get a module from the marketplace, set up your drivers, go through all these hurdles to actually set things up. And again, it takes time to configure. It's again difficult to learn. Now, for the database connector, we again wanted to make it interactive. And this is also one of the key things that we're trying to do with Mendix Connect, is that we give a very similar experience, tell a similar story throughout every integration capability. So that you've done it once, you'll be very familiar with how you can do it in other locations. Out of the box, we'll already support SQL Server, Oracle, Postgres, MySQL. You can directly get an overview of available tables and columns. You can start to edit and test queries directly within Studio Pro. And you can also, again, generate entities from your query result. So what does that look like again? And I'll show it live in a moment as well. But I can select database type. I can enter my credentials. I can either use that with connection details or a JDBC string, whatever works for me, whatever I prefer to use. As soon as I then continue, I can basically immediately start writing my queries and view my data from my database on the side. And then also, again, use that in a very similar fashion as to what I showed earlier. That you can just add a microflow action. And in this case, it's called query external database. And you can start to query that database and get some more information or start to do your calls, whatever you need to do, directly from there. And again, thought it would be nice to do a live demo. So I can, in this case, instead of adding, of course, a consumed REST service, I'm not going to add a REST service. I'm going to add an external database connection. And I can actually then enter my database credentials. So leave these are my credentials. Yes, first time right. So now, okay, so I've been able to connect to my database, and it's just a local running Postgres database in this case, nothing external. It could be running anywhere. It doesn't really matter for that for the use case. And in here, I can directly see all my tables. I can view what columns it has. I can see some views in here as well. And I can actually start to query what I want to query. So let's say I just want to query the first table. I'm just going to do something very simple. And I can run the query. Hey, I get all my response data back. And then I can actually use that response and save query. Now, I've already ran this before, so it won't actually let me set up a same query before on the same app in this case, so I can't actually generate that. But in this case, within a few minutes, I've again been able to set up a database connection and connect it in my Mendix app, and I'll be able to use this directly in my microflows again. So this can really save me a lot of time when developing, and really speeds up things as well for just the other use case. And I know what data I'm looking at, so I also know how I can actually work with that beyond that. Because of course before, you would connect, it would go into an entity, and how do I actually have to process that beyond? Get the questions in a moment. Now, just to recap, what did I actually talk about? Essentially, with the REST and the database connector, what we're really doing is we're working on making the modeling experience interactive and abstracting away a lot of the mapping, so making that all implicit. Now, what was mentioned earlier is also that, if you don't need it, why would you want it in your app? But actually what we're doing by making it implicit and abstracting it away, a lot of the complexity that we had to do before with it also goes away, because we no longer have to handle transforming data in the direct mapping that you would previously always create. This of course all to speed up the developers, because we want to enable you guys to be able to work faster and do things more efficiently, and give you a lot of tools to make your configuration a lot easier as well. So with that, thank you, and I'd like to open it up for questions.
I saw you actually looking at the consumed REST service that you built.
Mm-hmm.
And on top it said that there's a link to the actual OpenAPI standard. Obviously, the next question would then be, can we just put in the URL and get an automatic mapping of all the endpoints? And then in that bit, so
very good question. So so the question is whether, since we're using OpenAPI as a standard, whether it would not be possible to actually take the URL from a Swagger file or whatever, and just directly import everything from there into the consumed REST service. That's definitely a topic that we're exploring for the future of the connector. We're not there yet. It is still in beta, but it's definitely something that we're looking to explore in the future.
Question about the database connector. I always thought that you needed a database transaction and a database connection to retrieve data. But I think in the demo that you showed, you're not actually, the app is not running. So I don't think there is a database transaction or connection. So I was just wondering how that works technically, that you can still access the database, external database, without having the app running.
So the question is how. So the question is, how can we actually retrieve the data without having the app running? Because previously you would always need to have the app running, because that's where your drivers would be as well, right? That's what you would use to actually query your data. Well, the database connector now actually comes with both design time and runtime drivers, which means that we can query both within Studio Pro as in your running app, so that we can enable developers to also see what they're doing basically before running the app.
Maybe the question that I asked Vincent, right? Are you looking towards also expanding the options that we have in import mapping? For example, especially having to do with inheritance and with recursion in extensive recursive model, like with hierarchical data. So I remember specifically spending an afternoon clicking over thousands and thousands and thousands of nodes, just to be able to do an import of 10 levels deep.
So the question is, if we're looking at mapping, and if we're trying to solve things like recursion in there at the moment, we're looking into what we actually want to do with mapping. We know that we need to do something to make it, easier to use, make it more efficient. What the plans are, we're not 100% sure what direction we're going yet. So I can't give you a straightforward answer there, but it's definitely something that's higher on our radar as topics that we need to work on in the next period.
And I don't want to spoil it because I really like it. So it's just always next on the horizon.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Good way.
Yeah.
In the database connector, how do you deal with different environments? So you probably don't want to develop against production.
Yeah. So what it's actually done. Oh, yeah. Sorry. The question was, how do we actually deal with different environments in the database connector? Well, for the database connector, we actually generate constants directly. So you can then configure those constants on the platform whenever you deploy. So then you still have the flexibility of what you had previously, but you still get the benefits from using the database connector. Yeah.
Just wondering, important for this to REST and database connector, something actually works. So what kind of effect it has on file size in the MDR, I mean, in the end, and any performance issue that is actually working something other than people?
Yeah, good question. So the question is what the impact is of these connectors on file size and performance within Studio Pro and file size of your MPR. Yeah. So while the database connector is still something that you download as a module, core of the logic still comes shipped with Studio Pro. We just don't want to provide everything together with Studio Pro because then, yeah, the installer becomes a lot bigger, but the core of the tools is already delivered with Studio Pro. The REST connector actually, because we see a lot more REST integrations happening than database integrations typically. There's more smaller apps than the larger apps. That comes fully together with Studio Pro directly. So as soon as you install 10.6, you immediately have this functionality out of the box. So it doesn't actually affect your MPR size. In terms of performance, yeah, performance is expected to, well, based on our tests, it's similar to how you would do it previously.
So if you have one of these, let's say it's an old data service actually, but I decided I want to connect with a new REST connector. So data is a specification of REST. Is there some kind of automatic mechanism that can also recognize that there should be filter parameters, query parameters, something like that?
That's not something that we have at the moment, no.
Question about the REST connector, like specifically about logging, because the way I usually build it, I have to send some JSON, for example, and it goes wrong. I always log it in what goes an error under what I send. But now it's all in one activity. Would I still do that, or would I have to enable like a certain logging?
Okay, so the question is, what about logging? How do you handle logging with the new REST connector? If you get a response back that you don't know what to do with it, how can you actually handle that? So if I just go back to the microflow here. So this microflow will also return you an object of that root in this case. Now, that doesn't actually contain any of that information that you would want. But one of the future things that we want to add in there is the option to also just dump the generic information, essentially. How we're going to do that exactly, we don't know yet, but we need some way of facilitating logging in the future.
So that's to split up the actual servicing part versus the import mapping part.
Yeah.
How about the error handling for the REST?
How about error handling for REST? If you get an error, then you can just handle that in a way that you would previously do. You just get an error code back, and then you can process that as you would do previously. It is something that we also have higher on our wish list internally as well of things that we want to tackle. So we do want to look at error handling with the REST connector. So how can we facilitate this to make that easier? Because of course, also that's another aspect of setting up these integrations that can be time consuming.
Oh, very well. Thank you very, very much. And also thank you very, very much. Please come back to the stage. There were 2 questions from the audience at home. One question you already answered. It was about using different environments. So thank you. Yeah, it was there. Thank you for asking that as well in the audience. And there was one question about using that in-app configuration and if there was already a module available for that in the marketplace. So if there is something like a generic module to configure your in-app REST service configuration. I'm not sure. Not sure. No, you're not sure? Someone in the audience, someone used something from the marketplace in other apps?
That's a hole in the market.
Yeah. So let's go build it, I would suggest, and then we will see it in a few weeks popping up in the marketplace. Well, to round it off, because we have some drinks served where you started, so in the ground floor, I would like to thank both presenters with a small gift. There is Barbara with...
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Thanks. Yeah. So then, yeah, you already received a big applause both separately. And then I would say thank you all for being here. Have some drinks and see you at the next one.